A fast-moving object the size of Manhattan is hurtling towards our solar system.
On the 1st of July, NASA detected a mysterious object speeding toward Earth.
There's a mysterious interstellar object hurtling towards our solar system, exciting scientists across the globe.
The moment the faint signal from 3I/Atlas was captured, the world froze. This was not the ordinary whisper of a comet traveling on its lonely path through the void. It was something else, a message, brief but unmistakably structured, and its final transmission became the subject of hushed conversations in observatories, military command centers, and homes across the globe. What made it so startling was not only that it was intelligible, but that it was timed to perfection, as though the object itself had waited until the very end of its visibility to deliver its warning. The designation 3I/Atlas had been known primarily in the scientific community, but in that instant it became a household name, synonymous with something far greater than an interstellar visitor. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The comet had always been an oddity, its trajectory suggesting it originated outside our solar system. From the beginning, its path indicated that it was not bound by the gravitational embrace of our sun. Like Oumuamua before it, 3I/Atlas came from elsewhere, carrying with it mysteries we could barely begin to understand. Researchers had been tracking it with diligence, cataloging its movements, brightness, and composition. Yet no one was prepared for what unfolded as it neared the limits of detection. Just as its fading light seemed destined to vanish into the dark beyond, a signal pulsed, patterned, and deliberate. This was no random emission from dust and gas. It was a calculated communication, one that science alone could not dismiss. The warning was not wrapped in the comforts of metaphor or allegory. It was blunt, stripped of flourish, and that made it all the more chilling. Analysts struggled with the implications, running the data through linguistic models and cross-referencing with every known human language and code. Within hours, the consensus was undeniable. It was a warning, direct and unambiguous, suggesting that Earth was on the cusp of something vast and consequential. The transmission did not specify dates, places, or outcomes, but it left no doubt that the message was urgent and intended for all who could hear it. Humanity was not only being watched, it was being cautioned. The discovery reframed the purpose of interstellar visitors in the human imagination. Until that moment, comets were seen as icy relics, messengers of chemistry and physics rather than intention. Now, 3I/Atlas had bridged that divide, transforming from object of curiosity into an emissary. Astronomers who had dedicated their lives to measuring faint points of light suddenly found themselves cast as interpreters of a cosmic communique. The transition from detached observation to urgent engagement happened almost overnight, and the realization that this was not natural but crafted forced every discipline, from astrophysics to philosophy, into the conversation. What made the transmission even more unnerving was its timing. The comet had been studied for months, and while some anomalies were noted in its brightness and trajectory, none had hinted at intelligence. It was only as it departed, slipping from the reach of telescopes, that it spoke. The precision of that moment was impossible to ignore. It meant planning. It meant intent. The fact that it left only a final singular warning suggested deliberation, a choice to give humanity one clear message and nothing more. The absence of detail became its own kind of weight, pressing down on every interpretation. Was this the last chance to prepare, or a final gesture before silence? Governments responded with secrecy at first, attempting to contain the information. But data in the modern age does not remain hidden for long, and once the confirmation spread, the world shifted into a collective unease. The knowledge that something from beyond the stars had not only reached us but spoken to us in such a direct way stripped away the illusions of isolation. Humanity was part of a larger fabric, and 3I/Atlas's warning was a thread tugging at that fabric's edge. The unity of interpretation, so rare in the sciences, was itself extraordinary. There was no denying the intention. The comet's message was not speculation, it was a fact, etched in the binary of its transmission. The event also reframed humanity's role in the cosmos. Until then, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence had been largely speculative, bound to faint radio signals and the hope that someone, somewhere, might reply. But here was no reply. It was unsolicited contact, delivered not in dialogue but as a proclamation. It bypassed the protocols of research and patience and forced immediacy. The difference between listening for a whisper and being shouted at across the void was staggering. It suggested that others had knowledge, perhaps foresight, of something headed our way. The comet itself became secondary. Its identity as messenger mattered more than its composition or orbit. The implications rippled through every layer of society. Religious leaders found in it confirmation of prophecy, while skeptics demanded proof of interpretation. Yet the transmission, stripped to its core, was not ambiguous. It was a signal crafted in universal patterns, leaning on mathematics and fundamental constants to remove all possibility of misinterpretation. In that universality lay its greatest power, as no one could argue that it was merely coincidental. Humanity was being told something in a language beyond culture or creed, and what it was being told could not be ignored. Scientific communities scrambled to contextualize the warning, but the very lack of specifics forced a new way of thinking. The message did not tell us what was coming, only that something was. That absence compelled humility, stripping away the illusion of mastery. For centuries, humanity had believed itself the measure of progress, confident in its grasp of nature and the cosmos. But here was an emissary that spoke with the authority of distance and knowledge, delivering certainty without explanation. It was a reminder that intelligence is not defined by us alone, and that there are forces at play we have yet to comprehend. The warning also illuminated a paradox. In its brevity, it unified humanity while also deepening divisions. Some argued it was a call to vigilance, a reason to strengthen defenses and guard against cosmic threats. Others saw it as a plea for stewardship, a reminder of fragility in the face of universal scales. The lack of clarity left room for every ideology to shape the message into its own narrative. Yet beneath these debates lay a shared unease, a recognition that humanity had been addressed as one species, not as nations or factions. For the first time, the planet was the audience, and the speaker was not of this earth. The precision with which the signal was timed also spoke volumes about the intelligence behind it. To transmit at the point of departure ensured that it could not be ignored. It was the cosmic equivalent of leaving a final note at the doorway before vanishing into the dark. The fleeting nature of the event gave it weight, as there would be no second chance, no follow-up to clarify. It was both gift and burden, a message meant to linger precisely because it could not be repeated. Humanity was left with a single data point and an endless horizon of interpretation. In the wake of the transmission, telescopes turned outward with renewed urgency, scanning not just for new comets but for patterns that might suggest other messages. The universe, once a silent expanse, now seemed filled with the potential for communication. The question was no longer whether someone was out there, but what they might be trying to tell us, and whether we would understand in time. 3I/Atlas had shifted the framework from speculation to certainty, from waiting to responding. And in that shift, the human story was irrevocably altered. The event underscored the vulnerability of knowledge itself. For centuries, humanity had pursued truth through accumulation, layering data and theory until understanding emerged. But here was a message that defied that process, delivering certainty without context. It was knowledge stripped of explanation, leaving us to grapple with meaning without the luxury of evidence. That forced a new kind of engagement, one rooted not in mastery but in humility, a recognition that we are not the only authors of truth in the cosmos. The nature of the warning also raised profound questions about time. Did the senders of the message see something ahead that we could not? Was the warning rooted in their past, our present, or a shared future? The fact that it was delivered by a comet, a traveler from beyond, suggested both mobility and inevitability. The object was transient, but the message was enduring. In its passing, it handed off responsibility, leaving humanity with the weight of interpretation. Time itself became part of the warning, pressing upon us with urgency we could neither measure nor escape. 3I/Atlas's transmission transformed the way humanity saw its place in the universe. No longer were we solitary observers peering outward with curiosity. We had been addressed directly, called to attention, and perhaps to action. The warning was not about curiosity, it was about survival. And in that, it carried an authority that science alone could not temper. The event demanded not just analysis, but imagination, not just data, but vision. It was a call to rise beyond the ordinary rhythms of existence and acknowledge the immensity of what lay ahead. The story of 3I/Atlas is not just about an interstellar visitor. It is about the moment humanity realized it was part of a larger conversation, one in which we are not the initiators, but the respondents. The comet's final act was not to blaze across the sky, but to speak, and in speaking, to warn. That act redefined the relationship between humanity and the cosmos, leaving us with a message that would echo for generations. It was not a story of aftermath, but of awakening, a moment when the universe itself leaned close enough to be heard, and left us with the unmistakable weight of a warning that cannot be ignored. When the echo of 3I/Atlas's transmission faded into silence, what lingered was not merely the content of the warning, but the profound sense of being addressed. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if the stars harbored intelligence, building antennas, launching probes, and waiting for some distant reply. Yet the encounter was not a dialogue. It was a single voice, foreign yet deliberate, leaving behind the indelible impression that we had been noticed. What made it all the more staggering was that this recognition had not come through the expected channels of radio astronomy or interstellar probes, but by way of a wandering comet whose icy body carried more than frozen water and dust. Its trajectory was incidental, but its message was precise, and it changed the axis of human thought. The event forced a reevaluation of what it means to communicate across cosmic distances. Up until then, the assumption had been that any exchange would follow the model of human interaction. A signal sent, a reply received, and a conversation unfolding. 3I/Atlas upended that framework. It did not offer an invitation to converse or an open channel for questions. It issued a statement, brief and final, the kind of message designed to transcend dialogue. This was not an opening of communication, but a proclamation, the equivalent of a lone figure leaving a warning carved into stone at the edge of a forgotten road. The fact that it reached Earth as the comet vanished emphasized that the universe does not move at our pace, nor does it conform to our expectations of reciprocity. The physics of the comet itself became secondary to its symbolic role. For centuries, comets had been treated as objects of curiosity, cataloged for their orbits, studied for their role in the formation of planetary systems. In folklore, they were omens. In science, they were time capsules. With 3I/Atlas, both of these traditions converged. The comet did not just carry traces of ancient chemistry, but also a warning of timeless urgency. Its body was ephemeral, destined to fade, but its signal was eternal in implication. Astronomers who had once debated the density of its nucleus, or the composition of its tail, now found themselves speaking about intent, about what it means for a celestial body to deliver not just matter, but meaning. One of the most striking aspects of the event was the deliberate simplicity of the transmission. Instead of complex diagrams or layered signals that required decoding across multiple levels, the message was stripped to its essence. It relied on the most universal constants, mathematics, rhythm, proportion, so that no civilization with the capacity to observe could mistake its intent. The choice to avoid detail was as purposeful as the act of sending the signal itself. It ensured that no culture, language, or scientific tradition could monopolize interpretation. The message was aimed at the species as a whole, a unifying gesture that transcended all the divisions humanity clung to on Earth. That universality was both reassuring and terrifying. Reassuring, because it proved we were understood at the most fundamental level. Terrifying, because it reminded us that we were being addressed by an intelligence that operated far above the intricacies of our daily conflicts. The warning also suggested a vantage point we did not possess. To see danger and articulate it across interstellar distances implies not only awareness, but foresight. Whoever crafted the message had knowledge of scales of time and space far beyond human capacity. They had chosen a comet as the vessel, knowing it would pass through our neighborhood, knowing we would be watching. The patience embedded in that decision is almost unfathomable. It might have taken centuries or millennia of planning, but the delivery was flawless, aimed at a species just advanced enough to detect and decode it. That precision was unsettling. It meant that the senders not only knew of Earth, but had calculated the exact point in our development when we would be ready to comprehend the warning. It was less like a random discovery, and more like a test, one we had barely managed to pass. The global reaction illuminated another truth. Humanity had never before faced a message that belonged equally to all. Scientific discoveries typically flow through channels of research, peer review, and gradual acceptance. Political declarations belong to nations, and spiritual revelations are claimed by faiths. But here was something that could not be divided. It belonged to no single group, no particular ideology. It had arrived without borders, without preference. That fact alone made it disruptive. Nations accustomed to secrecy found themselves compelled to share. Religions that had long spoken of divine signs had to reckon with a message that came not from heavens of metaphor, but from the physical heavens themselves. Even the sciences, usually cautious and incremental, were thrust into the realm of immediacy. The comet's transmission forced every institution to confront the fact that some truths cannot be owned. What stood out most of all was the atmosphere of finality. The transmission did not invite speculation about what might follow. It closed the door with deliberate firmness. It was a last word, not a first. That finality created a paradoxical space. On the one hand, it removed the possibility of dialogue, stripping away any illusion that humanity could simply ask for clarification. On the other, it forced us to imagine beyond the limits of the message, to stretch into possibilities unanchored by confirmation. The silence that followed the warning became as powerful as the warning itself. It was not the silence of absence, but the silence of expectation, as though the universe had paused to see what we would do with what we had been given. In that silence, speculation flourished. Was the warning about a physical event, a cosmic collision, an unseen hazard drifting toward the solar system, or a natural cycle we had not yet detected? Or was it more abstract, a caution about the dangers of technological maturity, a reminder that civilizations teeter on the edge of their own undoing? The absence of detail left space for every interpretation, but at its core, the warning carried an undeniable implication: humanity was not safe. Safety, which had once been assumed as the default of existence, was revealed to be fragile. To be warned is to be told that something lies ahead. The comet had not merely brushed our skies, it had reshaped our horizon. The timing of the transmission also carried symbolic weight. Delivered as the comet receded from view, it underscored the fleeting nature of opportunity. Just as the comet could not be captured, the message could not be revisited. Both were singular events, destined to vanish into the dark. This was not a broadcast meant for casual reception. It was a deliberate act of urgency, demanding attention in the brief moment it could be heard. The comet's vanishing became part of the message, reminding humanity that warnings are not eternal, that the window for heeding them is narrow. The cosmos had spoken once, and that was enough. The rest was up to us. The psychological weight of being warned by something beyond Earth cannot be overstated. Humanity had always seen itself as explorers, stepping into the unknown, mapping and measuring with confidence. But the comet inverted that perspective. Instead of us discovering the universe had discovered us, and in doing so had sent a caution. It placed humanity not in the role of pioneers, but of students, reminded that our knowledge was partial and our foresight limited. The humility of that realization was as profound as the fear it inspired. For all our technology and ambition, we remained vulnerable, dependent on forces we could neither control nor fully comprehend. The event also ignited a reconsideration of legacy. If 3I/Atlas could carry a message across the stars, then intelligence could survive distance and time in ways we had only begun to imagine. The warning was not just about danger, it was also proof of endurance. Someone had cared enough to send it, had believed that survival was possible, that a warning could make a difference. That act of faith embedded in the message carried its own resonance. It suggested that civilizations do not always vanish into silence. Sometimes they reach out, leaving behind fragments of their wisdom for others to grasp. The comet's message was not only a warning, but also evidence of care, a reminder that even across unimaginable distances, concern could take form. As humanity absorbed the weight of the warning, the sense of isolation that had defined our cosmic perspective dissolved. No longer could we cling to the idea that we were alone, accidental observers of a mute universe. We had been addressed, singled out, chosen as recipients of knowledge we had not sought. That recognition altered the narrative of existence. Life on Earth was not just a local phenomenon, but part of a broader story, one in which intelligence communicates not through conversation but through carefully chosen moments of contact. 3I/Atlas had spoken once, and that was enough to prove the point. The silence of the cosmos could no longer be mistaken for emptiness. The comet's departure left behind a lingering unease, but also a new sense of possibility. If warnings can be given, then so can guidance. If a signal can cross interstellar distances, then so can hope. The transmission did not just close doors, it opened questions that stretched beyond imagination. Humanity was left with the dual weight of fear and potential, aware now that we are seen, that our actions matter, that our story unfolds on a stage larger than we ever conceived. The warning was heavy, yes, but it was also an invitation to rise, to prepare, to consider ourselves part of something vast. The universe had spoken once, and in that single moment, it made clear that our destiny is not ours alone to decide. 3. I/Atlas will be remembered not as a comet, but as a messenger. Its icy fragments may scatter into the dark, but the weight of its final transmission will endure, carried in the minds and imaginations of those who heard it. It was a moment when the stars ceased to be distant, when the gulf between us and the cosmos narrowed to a single pulse of meaning. That moment was enough to change everything. And though the comet is gone, its warning remains, etched into the story of humanity. A reminder that the universe does not only observe, it speaks. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us. What are your thoughts on 3I/Atlas's final transmission? Warning or misunderstood signal? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.